Inspiration, brave action, and heartwarming journeys. This is what the Louise H. Reed Show brings you. Now, here's your host, Louise H. Reed.
Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining me this wonderful Tuesday. I'm your host, Louise H. Reed. With listeners in over 145 countries and millions of iTunes downloads and ongoing podcasts, I am the fortunate host here every Tuesday at this time to bring you the incredible journey of amazing people who've truly embraced the notion of taking brave, bold action in pursuit of their dreams and goals. I'd like to remind listeners at this time that you can find information about me and my guests on my website following this live show at louisehreed.com. Now I'd like to share a little bit of info about today's guest, Sandy Abell. Sandy is a best-selling author, speaker, educator, coach, therapist, and owner of Inside Jobs Coaching Company. She has been a counselor and her business and has her business and personal coaching practice in Oregon and has done so for 25 years. Her passion is helping people move ahead, accomplish goals, and maximize their potential in every area of their lives. She specializes in working with women and personal growth, executives, business owners, professionals, and people in transition. Sandy's also the author of several books, including Feeling Good About You and Moving Up to Management. And she focuses on two areas. One, supporting and empowering women as they discover how amazing they are. And two, helping people improve their professional lives, reach goals, and maximize their potential. She, on the personal side, has been happily married for over 35 years, is mother of 2 young adults and grandmother to 5 grandchildren. For fun, she enjoys spending time with her family, motorcycle riding, which I want to hear a little bit more about today, and traveling to warm tropical places, hiking, camping, and any outdoor activity. And this is why I love this woman, and we had a connection the first time we met. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Sandy Abell.
Good morning, Louise. It's so fun to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So thank you for sharing this next hour with me and with our listeners.
It's my pleasure. Just lead on and I'll follow.
Let's do this. So you are many things. I was reading your bio and I was saying, best-selling author, speaker, educator, coach, therapist, business owner. How did this all come to be? So if we rewind the clock a little bit, because and my listeners know, I'm really interested in people's journeys and sort of the backstories. Okay. So how did this all start? I'm sure when you were 5 years old, someone asked you what you wanted to be. You didn't say best-selling author, speaker, educator, coach, therapist, and business owner.
I was 5 years old. The culture was very different than it is now. It was early 50s. The dads had come home from the war. All the women had to go back home so the dads could have the jobs. So there was a huge push for women to stay home, have babies, raise kids, do all that.
Right.
And in those days, nobody said, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was assumed you would get married, you would have children, and you would raise children and be a good wife. Those were the terms. So that was not a question. I assumed I could have children, and which is fine because I loved having kids. That was the best thing I've ever done in my life. Yeah. So that was a good thing. When I was really, really small, I was born in the first child of a nice middle-class family, and I was fine until I was 2, and then my little sister came along. And she fabulous, cute, funny, fun. Everybody loved her. And she was a newborn and I was 2. So of course they had to pick her up and carry her and pay attention to her and all that. But I interpreted it to mean that, I didn't count anymore.
Right.
And everything is about your own perspective. Mine was wrong, but that's what I did. So from then on, my self-esteem started to crash. And as I got older, I she was still cute, fun, and funny even when they weren't carrying her around. Yeah. So I needed to find a way to be important. And I made the poor decision that I had the ability to see a big picture and narrow it down to the little bottom line. And, people would agonize about, oh, I need to do this, but I don't know how. And somehow I just saw what they needed to do. So I would tell them. And that doesn't sit well coming from a 7-year-old. Then I got the reputation of being bossy. And then I had problems with friends. And, it just got dumber and dumber and more painful, really. It was not fun. And she continued to be cute and fun. So anyway, eventually I, when I got much older, realized I wanted to learn more about what is this self-esteem thing? What is it that I don't have that other people, that my sister has, that other people have? How did she get it? Where did it come from? How can I get it? All that. So I went to college and studied sociology and psychology and learned all about this stuff. And it was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And through all that process, I started to build my self-esteem. So then
and it's fascinating.
Well, and I wanted to share it with everybody else because it was not fun the first few years or so of my life. It wasn't. And I didn't want other people to have to go through that. So, because a lot of people carry that into, well, their whole lives. They just don't like who they are.
Well, we do that, don't we? In all aspects of who we are. We're a product of our culture, of our family, of the people and things that surround our upbringing. And so they may influence us really positively. And I know you had, you talk highly of your upbringing, so there's lots of positive influences. And then unbeknownst to the people who are caring for us and loving us and providing for us, there will be mistakes that they make. We too are making mistakes. I'm making mistakes, no doubt, with my children right now. And I sometimes joke, and it's a bit of tongue in cheek. I sometimes say, I wonder if I should have 2 savings accounts for them, one for their future therapy and one for their university. Because, we inevitably will make, do what we think is right in the moment, with the best of intentions, with the information we have available. But as you said, we see the world through our own lens. Obviously, that makes sense when you say it that way. And as a little child, it's even very different than an adult.
Right, right.
So when did you identify and actually put a label to this as a self-esteem thing that you have since learned that started quite early in your life? When did you kind of identify it was a thing that you wanted to look into?
Wow. I don't think I identified it. I just I knew psychology was about understanding people, and I wanted to understand myself and all the other people around. And so I don't remember actually hanging a label on it.
Right.
A long time. It was a long process realizing that I'm okay, and people like me, and I'm really fine. And what 7-year-olds thought maybe wasn't what the rest of the world is going to think for the rest of my life. So,
and you talk about this a lot in your book, Feeling Good About You. And one interesting thing that I'd not put a lot of thought into until you and I spoke and I became aware of your book was the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence. And it's actually hugely different.
Yeah. And
can you talk to us about that?
This is my definition. In my world, a lot of people use self-esteem and self-confidence interchangeably.
Yeah.
As the same term to mean the same thing. And in my world, self-confidence is your feelings about how you go do your day. If you've been in a job for 10 years and you're successful and they keep, giving you raises and all that, you're probably pretty confident when you go to work. But the thing about confidence is that it does fluctuate. If you get a new boss, suddenly you're not that confident anymore. Or if you have a fight with your partner before you go to work, you're having a bad confidence day. But overall, confidence is your feeling about how you can go do what you do. And self-esteem, on the other hand, is your reputation with yourself. When you look in the mirror, do you go, hey, I like you, you go have a dynamite day, you? Or do you go, yeah, you know, your hair's not good and you're just not cool and everybody's going to see that, you know? How do you talk to yourself? How do you feel about who you are? What's your reputation with you? And it has nothing to do with anybody else. It's just how you feel about you. And it's like self-confidence is a little boat on the ocean. And when the ocean is smooth, the little boat just sails right along and everything's great. But if there's a storm or big waves or wind, it bounces all over the place. Confidence is very volatile.
Right.
So it's like the bottom of the ocean. It takes a tsunami to move it, something really, really huge. So even if you have good self-esteem and you're having a bad confidence day because of all those things that shake it, you still don't let it affect how you feel about you. So if you've got good self-esteem, you can do anything. You've got the strength, the inner strength to do whatever you need to do.
You know, when you explained this to me when we spoke, and I know obviously you go into much greater depth in your book, it really, I felt like it was a bit of a punch in the stomach in a good way. Maybe it was a bit of a shake. It was a bit of a wake up call, because I was thinking to myself, well, what do I tell myself? And it really made me also reflect I had all these thoughts and feelings all at the same time. It made me quickly reflect on how am I teaching this in my children, because we all know that you want to develop, you know, I see my job as a mom to obviously love my kids and to develop them into strong, independent, well-functioning, contributing members of society, good family members, good men, because I have 4 boys. And of course, and you know, at the basis of that is self-confidence and self-esteem. But upon hearing this definition, I thought, okay, what am I doing to make sure that it's not just about confidence, that it's actually about self-esteem?
Good question.
Yeah. So
you do it?
So how do you answer that question?
Well, I think it's important to separate who the person is, who your sons are, the who, from the what. As you can focus on and support all the wonderfulness about them. And if they mess up or they do something, you can focus on, we don't do that, but not you're a bad person because you. So it's a different focus. Just
right. So that would be, you're focusing there on the behavior that you're not happy with, as opposed to the person.
Right, exactly, because the person is always lovable and valuable and capable and competent. And you tell them that all the time. And if they have a new challenge, it's like, you can do this. And even if they then go for it and can't do it, it's like, well, wow, you tried. That is so cool. That shows how strong you are. You know, whatever comes up, you build up the person.
You build up the person. And imagine, going back to what you said a moment ago in terms of looking in the mirror, and what do you say to yourself? Imagine we said those things to ourselves. Imagine if more people said those things to themselves.
Yeah. Self-talk is one of my big issues, because it's how most adults self-destruct. When you're young, when we're young, like you said, the culture and the family and all that gives us messages. like you said, your parents and us as parents do the best we can with what we know at the time. Like my parents, the culture was, you're a woman, so you're going to grow up and get married and have babies. Okay, that was the culture at the time.
Right.
There were not other options. That was pretty much, I think I mentioned to you when I was in high school, I went to the guidance counselor who also happened to be the football coach. They made him a guidance counselor because he was also, with this. And he said, okay, well, you're a girl, so you can be a nurse, a librarian, or what was the third thing? One of those, girl.
Right. Stereotypical female role.
Teacher, right. But he said, you won't need to worry about that. You just need to go to college to meet a good man and get married. And that was the thought. So yeah. I grew up and I did that, and it worked fine. And I got 2 wonderful children out of it. But that was the message in my head, because I'd been told that my whole life. And I had to look at my self-talk and say, wait a minute, maybe that doesn't fit anymore. It doesn't fit who I want to be. It doesn't fit the culture I live in now. That was 20 years ago. Maybe I can write my own script. And that's what people, I hope, and that's what I'm all about, is helping people identify their inner voice, which is their inner child, and what it says, and then ways to change it. A lot of people say, well, just do affirmations. Well, affirmations are nice, but if you do an affirmation without identifying and shifting where that message came from, it's like putting icing on garbage.
Right.
It doesn't really change anything. You can affirm all day long, but if you still believe the old thing. So yeah, your inner child and your inner voice, that's what it's all about. You've got to pay attention to how you talk to yourself.
So can you talk to us a little bit about how you came upon this yourself? So when you made that decision to, hey, this is kind of neat, I want to look more into understanding myself and in the worldview around me and that kind of thing. How did you come to this point where you're saying this to me today? How did you learn this about yourself, and what was that process like?
Well, I was married like I was supposed to be, and it wasn't working well for a variety of reasons. We were married 12 years, and like I said, 2 great kids, and he was very controlling and putting me down all the time, and always telling me, if you would just change, if you would just be different, it would all be good. And so I would contort myself to do what he said, and it still wouldn't work, and he would still, I couldn't please him.
Right.
And I looked around and realized that most of our friends liked me. They were not really liking him. And it was such a huge awakening for me. It's like, oh my goodness, maybe I'm okay. Maybe I'm really all right. And then I took that from there, and it's like, okay, I probably am all right. And it's not, who he is does not reflect who I am. And he can't tell me who I am. I have to define that. So then I started the path of defining who I wanted to be.
So I want to explore that a little bit, but I want to understand right now, what would you say to listeners who have just heard you say that, who have just heard you say, maybe I am all right, I have to define who I am? If that resonated with a listener right now, what would you suggest they do next? Because they're probably sitting there listening, wondering, okay, I'm in. This totally hit me. So tell me, what should I do right now? What's the next action I should take?
Oh, wow. Well, start paying attention to how cool you are, because you are. All of your wonderful talents and skills. And it's not just, I can draw, I can't draw. But what are you good at? Everybody is good at something. I learned that I'm good at you know, like the big picture to the little picture. And I'm also really good at listening and being supportive and communicating, those kinds of things that are not listed as talents, but it's part of who I am. It's an important part of who I am. So pay attention to what is really, really wonderful about you, which is just about everything, and start giving yourself credit. And also pay attention to the little voice in your head that denies all those things, because that's what's sabotaging you. Once you realize that that little voice comes from long ago and had a purpose at the time, right now, I'm going to talk about the inner child for a minute, okay?
Yes. Before you do that, I just want to say, those who've just joined us, you're listening to the Louise H. Reed Show with Sandra Abell today. Sandra has been talking to us about a lot of awesome things, focusing really right now, I've been taking the conversation into self-confidence versus self-esteem. I do also want to mention that in this talk about starting to pay attention to how cool you are, asking what are you good at, what's wonderful about you, and paying attention to your inner voice. I would also, because Sandy is not going to say this, I would recommend that you pick up the book, Feeling Good About You by Sandra Abell. You'll get so much more richness and content. So if this is speaking to you, you can find the book on Amazon.com, pick it up, check it out, contact Sandy and myself. Would love to know a little bit more about what you think. So I interrupted you, Sandy, because I just wanted to say that and welcome some new listeners, because that does happen. You know, from time to time, people hop on the show a little bit late. You're going to now talk to me about your inner child. So let's hear a little bit more about that.
Inner child is so important because your inner child is that little voice in your head. We all have our inner child, everybody. The little person you used to be who was receiving all those messages from the culture and your parents and your church and your family and, you know, everybody. And he or she's still in there. And I just, little weird visualization here. I visualize my inner child, little Sandy, is like in my gut, sitting on a stool, swinging her legs, watching adult Sandy run her life. And she's fine and I'm fine. I can run my life. I've done it a long time. And but every now and then, like public speaking, when I was a kid, I was a nerd before nerd was cool. And I was always the last person chosen for a team and all those things. And so I did not learn to trust my peers because they made fun of me and they bullied me. That was before bullying was a thing either, but they did that. And so I learned, my inner child learned, my peers are not safe. So when I do public speaking, my inner child, not so much anymore because she's learned I've got it, but she jumps off the stool, gets 40 feet tall and really loud and goes, "Don't go in there. Don't do that. They're going to laugh at you. They're going to make you feel awful." They get, you know, and she gets loud. And it's just as if I were walking into a room with a 5-year-old by the hand, you know, walking with my child, and she started freaking out. And what I do as Sandy the adult is talk to her. Sounds weird, but I do in my head. I say, it's okay. When you were young, when you were you, it was painful. It was tough. I hear that. But I'm a grown-up now and I've got it. So you get back on your stool and sit there and watch and calm her down. What I do is I calm her down. Basically, I'm talking to myself, obviously, but, and so she sits back on her stool and I go in, adult Sandy, and do my thing. And it's fine. And people are happy and they like what they hear and it's always fun. But that initial part, she's still in there and she still does that. The same thing when we go to a party or something. I'm not a social party person. I'm more of an introvert. So parties wear me out and there's lots of people in there and that freaks out my inner child. So I have to talk her through it. I tell her, okay, we're going to go in and we're going to find where they're handing out beverages, and we'll go get a soda or something. So we walk in and we get, room full of people. She's terrified. I look for the bar and we get a soda or water or something. And then I say, okay, now we got a drink. Everybody's holding a drink. That's good. Now let's go find one person who's all alone and introduce ourselves and talk to that person, because that person will be glad that somebody's talking to. So we go find one person, and then inevitably other people join us, and then it's nice, and then I get worn out and my inner child gets worn out. So then we go and we sit for a little bit and watch. And then we get up and go find another person. And, I have to work with her to function well at a party, but it works fine. So it's just about working with your inner child and being aware that she's in there and she's going to run your life unless you, the adult, take charge, just like with your children.
It's fascinating, and I love the way that you talk through these situations. I mentioned that to you previously when we spoke, and I think that there are all sorts of facets to us. Humans are so unique and multifaceted, and it really truly is interesting when you learn about others, but even more so when you learn about yourself. I think you then are able to be a better everything, a better mother, a better partner, employee, everything. And I love that way that you talk about that inner child. I talk a lot about the inner voice with clients that I work with as well. I love how you call it the inner child. I love your use of visualization. And I think that's really powerful. I think it also allows you to be kind to that person. And I think I've heard others, when they talk about that inner critic, they will swear at it and say I don't really, and it actually makes me feel sad, because it's actually part of you. It's still
right,
part
and it's your child. It's who you used to be. You don't swear at her. Oh my goodness. Doesn't empower her. That makes her feel, that reinforces what she's feeling. So your inner child needs to be loved and cared for and valued and supported. You don't have to do everything she says, because she's coming from a 5-year-old's perspective or whatever. Inner child is usually between 3 and 7, somewhere in there. But I usually, with my clients, I often suggest that they find a picture of themselves that age, whatever age they feel their inner child is, and put it on their bathroom mirror. And so when they're looking in the mirror, seeing themselves now, they can also look at that sweet little person, because all sweet little people, and love her and talk to her too.
Wow.
So important.
Yeah. I talk to I've given my inner voice a different name, and I'm now questioning that. I call her Sally for some reason. And I sometimes get firm with Sally, but I've never looked at Sally as the inner child. And so thanks for sort of creating that shift in perspective, because I think there'll be more kindness and love given to Sally.
Oh, well, Sally is just who you are, who you were, and will always be part of you. So I love Sally. That's great.
So you never get anywhere on your own. I'm a huge believer in, well, certainly when we're children, we never get anywhere on our own. We rely on teachers and parents and other family friends and other adults in our community. Right. But I think that also as we become adults, our tribe shifts and changes. Our families grow. We create our own families and networks. Who are the big people? You don't have to necessarily name them specifically. You may, if you wish, but talk to us a little about some of the people who have helped you rise and become the Sandy that we're speaking to today.
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. My parents, for different reasons, just for being who they are, or were, they're both gone. But my father taught me a whole lot about, well, they both taught me about reliability, responsibility, uh, pulling your own weight, being respectful, that kind of thing, all those important life skills. And he also taught me good money management. He would take whatever money we had, and half would go to pay the bills and all that stuff. And the other half, we did fun stuff. And he taught me balance about finances, and that was cool. And he also was very adventuresome, so he taught me how to go have fun out in the outdoors and do things. My mother was just very loving and sweet and smart. She was born in 1910 and college. And in those days, women didn't do that. So, and she finished in 3 years. So she was very smart.
Quite a role model then in that regard.
She was very strong just within herself. So they were a big part of it. Since then, wow, my husband is fabulous because he loves me just as I am. And even when I do really stupid things or kind of tick him off, he just smiles and says, "You're so cute."
Aww.
I mean, if you can find people that love you just as you are, even when you're awful, that's fabulous.
It is pretty special, isn't it? It going back to what you were talking about, you know, at the beginning of the show, the self-esteem being the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah,
that continues to support your self-esteem.
Exactly.
Yeah, so my partner and I, we met 3.5 years ago. So we both had a practice marriage. Like you've had a practice marriage, and yeah, I remember right after we met, I said, "I have one ask of you. You be you, and please just let me be me."
Yes.
And I know that sounds so simple, but that's all that I wanted. That's all that I wanted.
Oh, what a beauty, and so wise of you to identify that, because if you can be in relationships where both people can just be who they are, they don't have to meet the other's needs by contorting themselves, and you just love who each other is, that's spectacular. That is the best thing.
Well, I remember reading a book a number of years ago now that talked about how, and my background is in biology and a little bit of psychology, not as much psychology as you, but it does I do find it fascinating. I'm sure you and I could have a whole conversation on this piece that I'm going to bring up alone. Talk about attachment theory and how, you know, we all acknowledge and know what it looks like and what it feels like when we ourselves and when we have our own children or neighbors, see little children, and they venture out into the world, oftentimes not very far at first, look back to see that mum or dad is still there, that it's safe, and then, you know, they might go back for a cuddle and then venture off further again, and they know that safety is there, that safety net is there. Well, this particular book that I was reading was talking about how that never changes. It never changes in terms of us needing that sense of attachment and safety. It just, the person who you look to get that from changes. It becomes your spouse.
Right.
And that was quite a moment for me when I read that, and that was after, you know, after I was in the process of separating from my now ex-husband, and that was a big piece that got me to this. I need to be loved. I just need to be loved for me, and I want to love someone for who they are. So it's
very wise. Oh, that's, and if you can find a relationship that does that, you will be happy forever. That is the most important thing.
Really is.
Very wise, Louise.
Thank you. I have some wisdom. So tell me about this motorcycle riding. Tell me how I don't want the hour to pass without going into that. So I'm going to take the opportunity. Tell me about how that came.
Oh, well, actually, my husband has always loved motorcycles, and we've had one. Today is our 36th anniversary, and we've had 36 years, and we I don't ride my own. I learned to ride my own. I've got the endorsement and all that stuff, but I would much rather sit on the back, because then I can look around and not have to pay attention. And when you're on a motorcycle, you have to be hyper vigilant because cars don't see you,
Yeah.
drivers don't see you, and anything can, like, we live in the mountains and we ride in the mountains a lot, and the deer can run out in front of you in a nanosecond. And if you hit a deer with a car, it's stressful. If you hit a deer with a motorcycle, you're dead.
Right.
So you've got to really pay attention. I didn't want to do that. So so we just ride because it makes us both really happy. And it's
I love that.
just, yeah, I mean, Oregon is, especially Southern Oregon, it's all about outdoors. We've got beautiful forests and lakes and rivers, and so spend as much time as we can out there.
Wonderful. I love that. This is another big question. I know I've got some tough questions here. So I just think you have so much amazing experience and insight, life experience, as well as, education, experience through all of the clients that you have served and helped over the years. What's through all of this? Like, what's one of the biggest lessons that you've learned through this all?
That we're all the same. That we all have that inner child who wants to be loved and validated. And if you just treat people with kindness and listen, oh my goodness, communication, listening is so important. People don't listen these days. I don't know. Well, people aren't taught how to listen, and they aren't taught how to communicate, especially since technology has gotten so huge. They don't even look each other in the eye anymore, and that makes me really sad, because you can't make a human connection if you don't look at people. I mean, you can, but it's a whole lot harder. Just that we all want to be loved and valued, and if you treat people with respect and find the fun and the joy, that's what it's all about in my world.
Well, I asked that question too because, well, it's a really big question. Oftentimes it can get boiled down to something really quite simplistic and fundamental and human. And you did that. We all want to be loved and valued. And we have, especially in this hyper-connected, busy, fast-paced world of ours, that really does tend to get overlooked, doesn't it?
Right, and I'm afraid we're losing it. Yeah, it's we're human beings, and like you said earlier about that we want to be connected to people in a positive, loving, non-judgmental way.
Yeah.
And if you can give that to the people around you, hopefully they'll give it back, and you'll have fabulous relationships.
And if they're not giving it back, I'm suggesting you might need to find some new people. It's kind of posh.
Is the thing. That is the thing. That's another thing that's so important, is learning how to set boundaries. Because there are, unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, people who will use you, who will take advantage of you, who will steal from you, who will verbally abuse you or physically abuse you. And you have to be able, their self-esteem comes in. If you're lovable and valuable and you're important, you're not going to let somebody treat you that way.
Right.
And so you have to be able to set boundaries, and boundaries are huge. And that's another thing we're not really taught how to do.
So you just mentioned two things that we're not really taught how to do. We're not taught how to listen, and we're not really taught how to set boundaries. How would someone know if they're a good listener or not? So I'm curious about that, and I'm wondering, there might be other listeners out there right now who are curious about that too.
Well, you're a spectacular listener. All you have to do to listen is, first of all, be interested in the other person, and then ask about them, which you do amazingly well. And and then the important thing, if you watch the interviewers on television, the news people and whatever, they're supposedly doing an interview, But what they do is they have a list of questions that they fire at somebody. And
Okay.
can come back with an amazing answer that you really need to delve. It's like, oh, I want to know more about that. Tell me, please, what, that come from? And they just go, oh, okay, thank you. And then they ask the next question. They're not listening.
Okay.
And you have to, in order to be a good communicator, 50% of communication is listening. And people don't know that. They think it's talking. And I always remember my husband and I went to a party. My husband's name is Gene, by the way. I keep saying my husband. I don't like.
Thank you. That's nice. It connects me more. Hi, Gene.
I don't like labels. So Gene and I went to a party a few years ago, and it was a buffet, and you got your plate, and then you look for a place to sit down and eat. And we went into this little room, and there was another couple in there, and we walked in, and I mean, we would join you, and sat down, and they said, sure. And so we sat down and introduced ourselves, and we started asking questions. And we sat there for half an hour asking them. We knew the name of their grandmother's dog, for Pete's sake. We knew everything about them, where they worked, what they did, how they got there, the names of their kids, whatever. And after a half hour, we finished our meal and looked at each other and kind of, and got up and left. Because it never occurred to them to ask. They knew nothing about us except our names. They were so either self-absorbed or didn't know how to really interact. And we call folks like that black holes. Pour yourself into them and you find out, and people will tell you, it's amazing what people will tell you. Oh my gosh, they'll tell you anything you ever wanted to know and the lie you don't want to know. And then when you stop asking questions, you can kind of play with that. I'm sure you find it. If you stop asking questions, they just look at you.
Yeah, they don't know what to do next.
No, and it doesn't occur to them to acknowledge, here's this fascinating woman named Louise right in front of them. Find out about her.
Yeah.
Or ask what you think about, I don't know, have you ever traveled, or the world situation, or anything.
All sorts at that point. Yeah, it reminds me, you saying that reminds me of something that I heard years ago. And it was be interested, not interesting.
Exactly.
Obviously you want to be both, really. But we tend to focus more on the being interesting and selling ourselves, like to your point. So I don't think we need any help on that. We need more help on the be interested.
Exactly. Oh yeah. And if you are truly interested in another person, they will think you're fabulous.
Yeah.
They will walk away saying, what a wonderful woman. And all you've done is learned about them. And they don't know they don't know a thing about you, which in my world is just fine, because if they don't care, I'm not going to tell them. But it's all about, that's how you communicate. It's an exchange. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one of the courses. I don't remember many courses from university, but one of them particularly that was interesting for me was the psychology of intimate relationships. And when I say intimate, it was about close relationships. It wasn't your lover, not lover, just close relationship, as the word intimate sort of suggests. Yep. And I remember there was this picture of a simple ladder, and it's almost the rungs of the ladder. Essentially, you each took a turn at divulging and becoming more vulnerable.
Exactly.
And as you climb the ladder together, as you're saying, it's that exchange of climbing. 1 foot. Each of you put a foot on the rung of the ladder, and together you get to the top. The top being a close, intimate relationship. I just thought that was an interesting, simple way of recognizing how it is that you start as strangers and you get to something close.
Absolutely. You build trust. That's how you is you divulge a little bit and then a little bit more. And if it's received and respected, you do a little more, and they have to do the same, or you don't trust them, or, that's trust. That's building trust. And it's so important if you want to have a relationship. I worry that with all the technology, we live on a nice little road, but families walk to school, the parents walk their kids to school together, and the parents are always on the phone.
Yeah.
They're walking 3 steps behind. And it's like, wait a minute, talk to your child. This
Yeah.
is like your time together. Talk to your child. And what is that child learning? That they're not important? What are they going to carry into adulthood? That little person is going to be their inner child. And I wasn't important enough for mom to stop and hold my hand or look at me while we walked to school.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It really is. And listeners out there who may be guilty of that, you're not alone. But when you know better, you can do better. So there you go. Now you know better. So please do better.
Well, it's so important for parents, especially, to realize that everything they say to their child is creating their inner voice. So think before you talk. You can create a wonderful inner voice, make the inner child really happy when this person is 25.
Yeah.
And or if you ridicule and belittle or ignoring is the worst.
Why's that? So would that be equivalent to the cell phone, looking at the cell phone instead of the child? Is that an example of ignoring?
It happens a lot, absolutely. Yeah, because at least if you're being belittled, they're noticing you.
Wow,
If
okay.
ignored, you're not even worth paying attention. You don't exist.
You don't exist. Wow, of course.
If you do it enough, that child is going to feel like they have no value whatsoever. So,
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Everything seems so simple when talking about it in more abstract ways, as opposed to looking at our own lives and living our own lives. I think it's really easy to think about ourselves for a moment. And if we were having dinner with our partner,
yeah,
and they pull out their cell phone, how do we feel?
yeah.
And we're doing that as a culture. We're doing that to, I'm not saying every single person, but as a culture, we're doing that both to our adult friends and partners as well as our children, and they're even more vulnerable because they don't have a voice.
So how would you feel, Louise, if you were having dinner with your partner?
It has happened before. It has happened before, and I cried inside.
Inside.
Mm-hmm.
Did you
cry? And then we talked about it. I didn't cry on the outside, but I would have had it continued more. But inside, that was my very, very, very first feeling was,
yeah.
I was crushed.
Oh yeah, because it's like he just slammed a door in your face.
Yeah. You're
standing there talking to somebody, and it's like bang, and whoa, where'd he go? What? Oh, I guess we're done. Yeah. That's what technology has done, and because people haven't figured out how to monitor it yet.
Yes.
It's wonderful in so many ways. It helps us do this, which is big fun. But it also, it's like anything, if you don't control it or think about how you use it, it can be incredibly damaging, especially with kids.
Absolutely. And well, it's not that everyone who uses a mobile device is addicted to it, just like not everyone who drinks alcohol is addicted to alcohol. But there are addicts and with devices, just like there are other substances. And and this is still quite new for us, isn't it, in terms of recognizing technology addiction?
Exactly. Well, and because it is new, I don't know if people see it as addiction. If you drink too much alcohol or use the wrong kind of drugs, it's been around long enough that we know, oh, that's an addiction, and maybe I should look at that. But just because you're on your phone, everybody's on their phone. And so I don't know if people identify that as addiction. I want to know what the heck they're doing on their phone. If somebody calls you and you have to talk to them, sure, answer the phone. But otherwise, what the heck is on the phone? I mean, I don't get it. What is so important that you ignore what's going around you to look at this?
I've done some reading about it. I can't say extensive reading. So listeners who may have more information about this, please feel free to send me some. But from what I have read so far, the pleasure center that gets activated in the brain when you get a ding is the same pleasure center that gets activated for cocaine users.
Yes, it is.
So I imagine, are you doing it then for the ding? Do you do it because then you know when you text back or you email back, there's going to be it's a very primal, addictive aspect of our physiology that really seems to be at play here.
Well, and it's not the ding, it's what the ding represents, which is somebody's thinking about you.
Right, okay, right.
Thing. So
like Pavlov's dog, it's not the bell, it's actually what comes after the bell. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were talking about connection a while ago, and we all want to feel connected. We want, because it makes us feel important. If somebody cares enough to text us or email or whatever, excuse me, it means that they're thinking about us.
Right.
And it means that on some level we must be connected.
Right.
That's another thing. People don't know how to just be.
Yeah. I know that one. You see that I was talking with one of my boys about that yesterday, actually, about how that was one of my favorite things about having young children, is that like when he was younger, how we'd go for walks in the neighborhood, and we'd call them adventures.
Yes.
And they're just walks in the neighborhood, but it's what cool things can we find today? And he'd see something on the sidewalk that he'd never seen before and crouch down and explore it with wonder, and that's being present.
Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't catch that, Sandy. That you cut out a little bit there.
I just said that's getting lost.
Yeah.
That people take walks with their phone in front of their face. I mean, they could fall in a hole. They would.
Yeah, I know, it's true. It's true. I'm sure there are YouTube videos about that. But anyway, Sandy, we have 2 minutes left of the show. Our coffee date has whizzed by. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you so much for your time and insight. And before I close, I want you to share with us, how can people reach you if they want more information, want to work with you, just want to explore you more, get your book? How can they reach you?
Okay, fun. My website is insidejobscoach.com, because self-esteem is an inside job. And I have, there's the book, Feeling Good About You. I have a couple of packs. I call them packs. It's a combination of worksheets and information and a hypnosis session. There's a confidence and a rapid power pack, and you can access those from the website. And I also offer a free coaching call. So if anybody is interested, would like to just talk with me and see what coaching is about, just send me an email, sandy@insidejobscoach.com, and put free call in the subject line, and I'll get right back to you.
Awesome. Awesome. So please take advantage of that amazing opportunity with Sandy and see if there's a good match there. And so again, Sandy, thank you so much for your time. I thoroughly enjoyed this hour exploring all sorts of interesting topics with you. And I also at this time want to thank all of my loyal listeners and followers, and remind you that information about Sandy, in case you did not capture this, you can get from my website, louisehreed.com. And also a big shout out to those listeners from iHeartRadio. Hello, I see you. I know you're there. And as always, to my producer, Cameron Steele at Contact Talk Radio Network. And finally, I'm here to highlight and showcase people who are taking brave, bold action, whose actions have a positive impact in our world, like Sandy. With that said, I'd like to encourage you all to be brave, be bold, and be happy. Until next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm Louise H. Reed, wishing you an amazing day. Goodbye, friends.